Good afternoon and welcome to our session about finding the best suppliers through peer reviews. My name is David Yarkin, founder and CEO of Procurated, a ratings and review platform built for government. Procurated allows states to look at more than 20,000 reviews of suppliers written by their peers in other states before making important purchasing decisions. And Procurated is completely free to government. I'm thrilled to have a great panel today to talk with you about why this is such an important issue for states. Joining me is Kurt Topper, the Secretary of General Services in Pennsylvania, and Doug Carlson, the Deputy Director of the Nebraska Department of Administration. We're going to hear from Kurt and Doug in just a minute. But since this is the sixth day of a six-day conference, we wanted to start on a fun note. I grew up as a latchkey kid outside of Boston and watched a lot of television. While the shows were great, it was the commercials of the 70s and 80s that I really loved. And the best of them all was the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup commercial. Here's the setup. A teenage boy walks down the street listening to a Walkman and eating a massive chocolate bar. A block away, a young woman walks towards him, eating directly from a huge jar of peanut butter, lost in her own world. The two collide and something magical happens. Take a look.
Chocolate.
Peanut butter.
Hey!
Oh, hey, you got your chocolate and my peanut butter.
Peanut butter on my chocolate.
What? Delicious.
Two great tastes that taste great together. Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Real milk chocolate, delicious peanut butter.
Reese's Peanut Butter Cups.
And Reese's Crunchy Peanut Butter Cups topped with chopped peanuts.
So what does this have to do with finding the best suppliers in government? As it turns out, everything. Before these commercials came out, none of us could have imagined two completely different foods coming together to create something so wonderful. But they did, and the world is a sweeter place for it. There's a similarly wonderful combination of two seemingly different things coming together to create something fantastic, the worlds of consumer technology and government procurement. First, let's start with consumer tech. When I go to a new city and want to find a great restaurant, what do? I take out my phone, I go to Yelp, and I find a great restaurant based on the reviews of thousands of my fellow diners. When I'm looking for a hotel to stay in, I go to TripAdvisor. I type in the name of the city and voila, the best places to stay are presented to me, whether it's a business trip, a trip with my kids on vacation, or a golfing vacation with my buddies. And I know the place is going to be great because I looked at reviews from thousands of travelers. In both of these examples and in dozens more, we as consumers use modern apps like these to make better decisions. The question for today is this: can we take the peer review technology from a Yelp or a TripAdvisor or an Angie's List and make it work for government? Can looking at reviews from thousands of our peers help us make better purchasing decisions? To help me answer this question, I'd like to bring Kurt and Doug back into the discussion. Let's start with you, Kurt. And maybe before you start to share your challenge in Pennsylvania, tell us a little bit about yourself for those who don't know you.
Thanks, David. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk about our experience here in PA, and appreciate the plug for a great Pennsylvania company in Reese's. You know, it's funny, you and I have known each other a long time, and as it turns out, when you and I bump into each other, good things happen. So I'm really happy to talk about one scenario where that's exactly what happened. I'm Kurt Topper. I'm the Secretary of General Services in Pennsylvania. Like most NASCA members, or most states, we have we're just like other general services departments. We have responsibility for the Commonwealth's procurement, among a wide variety of other back office functions for the Commonwealth. In Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth government is about a $32 billion enterprise, about 70,000 employees, and DGS provides basically all of the goods and services in the background that make it possible for those agencies to do their work. Among the more popular things that we do is something called our Co-Stars program. It's hugely popular with the members of our General Assembly and it's very popular with our local governments and with our supplier community. We've invested a great deal into it over the course of the last 15 years and have grown it to a fairly significant size. CoSTARS stands for, it's basically the brand name for our cooperative sourcing program. In Pennsylvania, like most states, local governments and educational organizations have the opportunity to use state contracts in order to procure goods and services without having to go out and solicit on their own for those goods and services. The program has grown immensely. There are currently 8,600 or so, actually probably 9,000 by now, registered users. Those are buyers who use the contracts, about 2,400 suppliers, and annual volume in this network of contracts and transactions is about $1 billion a year in Pennsylvania. And so one of the problems that we've experienced as the program has grown is, or I guess the problem that we've been working together with Procurated to try to solve is, I think really breaks down into sort of three categories. I'll call it 3 C's, right? It's confidence, it's culture, and it's convenience. And so here's the confidence problem. Since the vast majority of the contracts that we make available to local government entities are multiple award, and since the users of those contracts are not required to go out and do a broad solicitation, they're able to do relatively informal competitive processes when they make selections. They don't also always have the benefit of having run through a very formal competitive process in order to ensure that the suppliers they're choosing are the right ones. So can they have confidence in the suppliers that they're choosing? Do they have awareness of the supplier's past performance, working with other municipalities, etc.? The problem from our perspective at the state is that every contract that we make available to those users carries with it at least our tacit endorsement, if not our formal endorsement. And so we want to be sure from the state level that the value that users of our contracts are getting is significant. So that's the confidence issue. How does our local government entity know which supplier to choose from the 12 that are off the contract when they have to fulfill a need? The second problem is one of convenience, or really resources, if you like. As it turns out, our local buyers in our local governments wear 12 different hats typically. They don't typically do procurement full time. They don't have a great deal of time and effort, or a great deal of time to put the effort into due diligence that's required in order to run down references and make sure that they're making good choices when they choose suppliers. And the state also is not in a position to invest great amounts of resources into vetting suppliers and making sure that suppliers offer great quality at a great price. And so it's a little bit of the Wild West where no one has the time or the resources to really invest in making sure that suppliers all get properly vetted before choices get made. Again, how do we choose? And then because we just don't have the time to put into the effort that's required to choose well. And then the third piece of this is culture. There's a really significant reticence on the part of most public officials, public procurement folks, a significant reticence about talking about the performance of our suppliers when we get requests for references and things of that nature. We tend to treat it as if it were an HR reference request, which in Pennsylvania means that basically I can't tell you anything. I can tell you the amount of time that an employee worked for me when they started and when they stopped. But because there's such fear of potential litigation, and we're so risk averse, we tend not to be responsive to reference requests when they come formally. So we were experiencing all of those problems, and they were all working to varying degrees to sort of undermine some of the confidence that folks had in our CoStars program. And as it turns out, bumping into David as he was pulling together this new idea was really helpful for us, because it helped us think about how we could leverage this kind of social media technology in order to solve those problems. And we've been working real hard here over the course of the last year or two to try to build a program that makes it convenient and easy and culturally acceptable for public procurement folks to interact together, to share their experiences about their suppliers, and effectively solve this problem on their own without a great deal of investment on the part of the state. And it's starting to get off the ground, and we're really pleased with the results thus far. It's one piece of a big problem having to do with supplier development and supplier performance management, and I'm thrilled that we've got it off the ground.
Very good, Kurt. Thanks very much, and we'll hear more. We'll hear more from Kurt in a minute. Let's turn over to Doug. About halfway across the country, I think a lot of the same challenges, Doug, that Kurt is facing and his team is facing in Pennsylvania, but also some different ones. So love to hear you talk about some of the challenges you're facing and how a technology like this can be a part of the solution.
Yeah, thanks, David. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Doug Carlson. I'm the Chief Procurement Officer for the great state of Nebraska. Prior to COVID, I got to buy some really fun, unique things. I got to buy buffalo once, procure buffalo on behalf of Nebraska. I went home that night and told my wife that I'm a buffalo baron now. She didn't seem to agree with me. But now that COVID's going on, obviously we're focusing on that. But, when I think about things that aren't COVID related, one of the big things that I think about is contract management. And there's really 5 pieces to contract management. Obviously, controlling the cost of the contract is important. Meeting the objectives of the contract. Is it doing what it's supposed to be doing? Driving towards customer service. The agencies, the political subdivisions, all of those things, is it meeting their intent? Part of that is mitigating risks. Are we making sure that we're getting value and not putting ourselves at risk there? And then vendor management. And this all falls under what we call in the state of Nebraska is lowest responsible bidder. And I'm going to guess that every state has some sort of either statute, policy, or maybe even best practice of lowest responsible bidder. And there's 6 functions with that we need to focus on. First one, the vendor. Do they have the ability, the capacity, the skill set to perform the actual contract? The second piece to that is, do they have the integrity, the character, reputation, judgment, experience, all of those things? And how do we better measure that and understand that? The third one is, can they perform on time? And that's an important piece, because as you add delays, it gets more expensive, which we obviously want to avoid. The fourth one is the quality of work that they're doing. Can they actually perform the highest level of standards that our taxpayers are expecting of our vendors? And then the fifth one is, are we ensuring that they have always complied with laws, regulations, all of those things? And then the sixth one is the life cycle cost. And I think some people may be sometimes surprised when I talk about the cost of the contract when we're actually going to award a bid to somebody. That number 6 is the cost, and all those other things are, I would submit to you, more important, certainly just as important as the cost. So vendor management is a key function of that. So we started this about a year ago, really ramping up our vendor management program, because we do a lot of cooperative contracts, a lot of political subdivisions in our state utilize us, because as Kurt talked about, they may not have the robust procurement professionals that we have. So we want to ensure that we're doing good things. So we are leveraging Procurated. And there's really two reasons for that. The first one is data. We need to find a way that we can measure performance in a very meaningful, easy way. It's 2020, folks. We should act like it. And the second one is, are we getting that data in real time? So we always know the latest and greatest about the performance of that vendor. Governor Ricketts, the governor of the great state of Nebraska, has said more than once that we want to run state more like a business. And there's no business out there that's going to do business with a vendor that they're not measuring somehow. Me personally, in my own personal life, I have not bought a single thing without going to, whether it's Yelp or Amazon, all of those places, to see how the company that I'm buying from, see how they're performing. And we should do the same thing in state government. And that's what Procreated is going to be able to do for us. So we're definitely excited about our vendor management program and leveraging this technology for on behalf of the citizens that I get the opportunity to serve. Back to you, David.
Very good. And it's interesting, hearing very similar themes coming out from both Nebraska and from Pennsylvania. I want to take one quick deep dive into a topic that sort of triggered us to create this in the first place, which is really around vendor references. And so, Kurt, you talked before about the reticence of folks to even take a reference call because of fear that they may get pushback based on what they say. From my experience, back when I was in Pennsylvania working with you, I found that when our evaluation committees would actually get on the phone and call references, call other states, they heard things like, oh, the company's amazing. They can do no wrong. They walk on water. They'll take your dog for a walk in the morning. But very rarely did we hear the actual truth. This company actually had real challenges in delivering for us. And here's how they solved it, things like that. And one of the things that excites me about the platform is you can read, literally thousands of reviews about a company that are candid. But I left government, a decade and a half ago, and I'm curious to ask both of you: is that still a challenge? Do you still feel like when you get someone on the phone to do a reference call, do they say the supplier's fantastic, or are you getting more candid feedback?
Do you want me to go first?
Sure. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's still an issue. I mean, the real challenge there, David, is that during the formal public procurement process, it's the vendor who gets to choose the references that they're going to make available for us to call. So they're not going to tell us, they're not going to offer up vendors or former customers who've been disappointed. Yeah. So you need some alternate means of understanding what their larger performances look like with other customers, and I think that's why platforms like this have been so successful in the commercial world as well.
Yeah. How about you, Doug? Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, so this has been an interesting experience. I've been doing this position. I've been in this position for about a year and a half, and so I've heard a couple times of anecdotal evidence of agencies that select a vendor and they don't quite anecdotal. They said, well, we knew this vendor was going to be bad, and now sure enough we're having issues with said vendor, and there was just no way to prevent them from getting the award because no one was doing vendor management prior to this. So this possibility that now we're going to be able to actually measure their performance in a very meaningful way. It's very public. We can all see the same information. That's going to make just the biggest difference. So we don't have to do business with bad actors anymore. And conversely, now people, if we have vendors that are doing fantastic things, that should be measured as well. So maybe we want to do business with the very best people, very best organizations, and having a vendor management program is going to allow us to do that. So we're definitely excited about that.
Yeah, and I think what we'll see in both these states and other states that adopt it is you really do have a left-hand and a right-hand problem in a lot of states where one department may have had a horrible experience with a supplier, another supplier comes back 6 months, a year later, and hires that same company without knowing about that bad experience. And hopefully a tool like this helps share that information and helps avoid challenges. Or as you said, Doug, helps find great suppliers and reuse them over and over again.
Yeah,
Yeah, please, Kurt, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think it's part of the puzzle. Public procurement and public contracting has historically been sort of arm's length, transactional, and information poor. And what we need to evolve into is a system where our contracting, allows for effective communication and supplier development in the same way that our commercial counterparts do routinely. I think tools like this are part of the solution to that, because what we need is, especially for strategic relationships, we need relationships to be closer. We need to have free flow of information, and we need things to evolve more, at least for many of the categories. We need things to evolve more into more partnership kinds of models than transactional models.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Kurt. Again, going back to low responsible vendor management, it all falls under contract management, which is I would assume is a goal of every procurement department across the state agencies across the country. So, we have a responsibility here in Nebraska. You certainly have responsibility everywhere to make sure that we get this right. And Procurated for me is just one tool to do that. So we're going to measure their performance, good or bad. So I can look every citizen in the eye and say, hey, I'm spending your money in a very responsible way with people, with organizations that are going to do the right thing on behalf of the citizens.
I think that's a great note to wrap up on. I think this discussion has really shown a light on how critically important it is to be able to understand the actual past performance of suppliers that you're selecting and the actual performance of your current suppliers that you're trying to manage. And we all know, and Doug and Kurt said this, that technology alone can't solve, big challenges in government. But as a fan of government operations and innovation in government operations, and a fan of technology, I'm really optimistic. And I believe that we can take a page from the playbook of a Yelp or a TripAdvisor and use the power of thousands of government employees and their candid reviews to help us make better decisions. And I'm excited to see what happens in Pennsylvania and Nebraska in the coming years, and really appreciate Kurt and Doug joining us, not only in this journey, but joining us today and sharing their thoughts. So thanks very much, and I look forward to seeing the rest of the conference.